Hello and welcome to the large format virtual. Is it? No, it's not. It's the large format photography podcast virtual gathering in the desert, 2021. Let's just add some more numbers onto that. Welcome to those people that have made it along to join in with us live, and also those people that are going to be watching this on YouTube when we've actually got all the editing done. Now, we have, in the past, we've done 2 guest speakers, and this time we're going to be having 1 guest speaker who's going to, and we're probably going to slightly split this into 2 halves so we can have a little bit of a break afterwards. But before we get onto that, there's a couple of things I just want to say. The first thing is I just want to say thank you to George Zetto. I think that's
George.
Gordon Zetto.
Zito.
It begins, or Zito. It begins with a G.
They call him that next time I see him.
Yeah. So
just don't call him Bungle, Eric. Okay.
Okay.
Call him George, but don't call him Bungle or Zippy.
Our American friends will have no idea what you're talking about there.
I know that one, Zippy.
Yes.
Continue.
So I just want to thank Gordon for being our guest last time, and I just want to apologise for not being part of that. Reason why I wasn't part of that is COVID dropped into our household pretty much on the same day as that. I didn't actually have COVID at the time, but my youngest boy had got it, and it sort of like was putting things up in the air a little bit. And lo and behold, and completely expectedly, despite being double vaccinated throughout the house, it travelled through the house, and I've had COVID as well, and it was not particularly nice, but not anywhere near as bad as it could have been. I'm just about okay, but if I'm coughing, then I've still got a bit of COVID cough, even though it's like 2 weeks since I've been able to leave the house and stuff like that. There you go. There's a little cough there. So I just want to say, thank you to Gordon there, because I edited that show and I thoroughly enjoyed listening to it, and I really wish I could have been part of it. If nothing else, just to correct the conversation when it got on to equivalence in terms of apertures and focal lengths and things like that, which had me shouting. But there you go. That's that can happen another time perhaps. So that's the first thing I want to say. And on a less happy note, I just want to say not a great deal, but a little about those people that also listen to other podcasts, in particular the Sunny 16 podcast. You'll be aware that one of the co-hosts on that show, John Whitmore, he died suddenly, probably about a week and a half or so ago now, about 2 weeks ago. Real shock. I don't actually know how old he was, but he was somewhere in his 40s, and it's and he's left his wife Anne-Marie and his 2-year-old daughter Harriet. And to say it's sent shockwaves across people is an understatement. And I met John on a few occasions. A couple of years ago in 2019, he did an open day at his home where he has this dark shed. Because John is apart from being a photographer, professional as well, he is an absolutely excellent printer, or was, I have to say, an excellent printer. And he generously opened up his dark shed to anybody that wanted to come along on this particular day, and many people did. And he gave me my first experience in the darkroom. And he was using a DeVere 504 because he was a large format photographer, multi-format photographer, and he helped give me the bug about getting into the darkroom and printing. And so and his enthusiasm came across. Lots of people have been inspired by him, and it's a huge and sad loss that he's gone. So my condolences to his family and to those that knew him well.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's on that. That's the sad part, and let's move on to today's gathering. And as I was saying earlier, we have a guest who's, and we're going to split this up into a couple of parts.
Actually, we have two guests. Really, you were mentioning we have Ethan and Ethan's beard. This beard is sort of occupies its own time-space continuum entity. Like it's become a thing, folks. You'll see it. It is impressive.
Yeah. And well, you've just given it away there. We have Ethan, and you think, well, who's Ethan? Well, it can only be one. There's only one Ethan that we know, isn't there? Yeah, and that's Ethan Moses of Cameradactyl. Hello, Ethan.
Oh, come on, Ethan.
Hello. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah.
Obviously, a long way away.
Yeah, you don't really do tech and technology in general, do you, Ethan? So I mean, yeah, we'll give you allowances there.
Thank you.
Ethan, it's fantastic to have you with us. And we've got quite an agenda because we had a little bit of a planning meeting yesterday because there are just so many things that you've been involved with lately. And how we want to do this, the format's going to be on a case of Ethan is going to talk and he's going to give us a bit of an idea about some of the things that he's doing, and there are going to be multiple things that he's going to talk about. And but we want this to be a Q&A session. So if anybody has any questions to Ethan, obviously in the early stages, probably let Ethan just go into the flow. But at some point, these will all morph into Q&A sessions, and more questions the merrier. We've got an absolute shed load of topics that we can potentially talk about. So we've got a list, and we'll work our way through it. Depends on how we're doing for time. But I would say that in about 1 hour from now, we'll have a break, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about another set of topics, one of which will be talking about direct positive printing and self-developing backs, which is something that Ethan's been involved in extensively lately. And there's a lot of excitement around that, but that's going to come a little bit later. So to start off now, I'm going to switch back to that list that we had that I've now lost. And I found it now, seamlessly found it. And it's to talk about the idea for self-developing backs, self-developing cameras and reversal. Oh, no, aren't we doing that one later, Ethan?
I thought we were talking about the camera itself. This is like the lead up first, and then we'll talk about, using the camera. And
good job we had that planning meeting, wasn't it?
It's fallen down already. Well, whatever it is that we're meant to do first, I'm going to hand over to Ethan now and take it away.
Hey, yeah, so I got a short list of things to talk about. I guess, a lot of you have seen on Instagram that I spent about a month taking pictures in New York with this 20x24 camera, but I thought I'd just sort of back it up today and show you some of what led up to it. So we'll start with these. So I was always kind of into Elsa Dorfman's 20x24 Polaroids, and at some point my friend Joe got into direct positive reversal black and white prints, kind of like this thing. See if it'll focus. And they don't make Polaroids anymore, and we were thinking, we had shot plenty of paper negatives, but it requires an intermediary process and is not like as nice to bring to an event where people can look at a final print, right? So we were thinking about this direct positive reversal process quite a bit, thinking about building a big camera to use it in, but that that we knew was a long way off, and so we just started shooting pieces of photo paper in a 4x5 camera and developing them in a darkroom, which is totally possible. Let's see what we got here. Here's one example from before we had built any equipment to do this. This was just part of what I call the Infinite Joe's photo series with occasional Ethans, where we just would take a picture and develop it and then try and figure out what was wrong and continue for months and months and months. The ultimate goal, I think, was 20x24 Polaroid replacement, and we were thinking about how you would build an Afghan box camera sort of just abstractly around that idea. But, you know, some back of the napkin math revealed that this camera would hold 75 or 100 pounds worth of liquids, and it'd be 6, 7, 8 feet long, and basically a room just to maneuver the paper. And so like that wasn't going to work. And so we started thinking about other ways that, you know, you might handle paper. But, you know, for maybe 2 years, this was just thoughts or maybe some drawings. And in the meantime, we were sort of working on perfecting 8x10 and 4x5 black and white. And then later we got into, you know, color reversal prints with RA4 paper, which we'll talk, you know, quite a bit about later, I bet. And so I guess the way of handling a lot of liquid, or not having to handle a lot of liquid or have that much liquid in a camera that you can't really put on a tripod is was this idea for a self-developing back. Let's see, I should have grabbed one. Well, it's basically a 4x5 film holder that's a little bit thicker and works like a developing tray. And that's it. It has a baffle in it. Pretty simple device. And so we started shooting a lot of those. And then we also built an Afghan box camera. I don't know. I haven't really posted anything about it yet because I'm not ready to release it, just because I can't produce it fast. But Joe has made some videos on it. If you check out Joe Van Cleve's channel, it's the Albuquerque box camera. And that's just like a big box that you put your arm in a sleeve and, you know, develop photos in tanks in the bottom. I can show you guys some examples of, you know, just things we were doing on 4x5 with direct positives of different sorts. So let's see if it'll focus. I can't show my face because then the camera will track my face. So, you know, these are some color experiments. We played around quite a bit with Ilford Harmon direct positive, which, you know, we didn't get super into pre-flashing these things perfectly to get good, you know, tones. We just had very contrasty pictures, and then, you know, had a lot of experiments trying to get the RA4 process to kind of show anything. Let's see what else. These are just like a lot of I don't want to say failures, but you know, lab tests. Eventually, we kind of got this process pretty pretty reasonable. And these are all shot with the Afghan box camera. Let's see what else. Here's some more off-color Ethans. Some more reasonable ones. Yeah. Let's see what else we got. I can show you some 8x10s that we did early. I built a self-developing back that required a funnel that screws onto the top of the back after you shoot it. And that worked for about 50 prints, but then broke into a lot of pieces. So these are some of the pictures that we shot on an 8x10 with just like a sliding box camera, both in the color and black and white reversal process. One of the interesting things, these are some of the very early ones, actually. Joe and I both made some YouTube videos about these processes. Hey, Eric, this one's for you. This was shot with a homemade periscope lens. Anyway, we posted a couple of YouTube videos about it. You know, this is not a process that we invented. We certainly had our, you know, everybody has their own take on some process, but I think we were just the first to put it on YouTube. So what was maybe something that a couple hundred people had seen on Photrio, all of a sudden people started seeing the process done on YouTube. And like now there are Facebook groups about it, and Reddit subreddits and whatnot. And so, oh, am I getting pinged from Eric? Yes. Copying questions. Okay. Sorry, I got off topic with with Facebook messages from Eric. Anyway, I think what was interesting is in the period of the last couple of years, because we made a YouTube video of something we found on Photrio or APUG, sort of the sport of direct color positive has evolved to a place where like other people have really made some contributions and sort of figured this thing out to a reasonable pace. And then I guess like at that point, I had these self-developing backs. I thought, you know, a lot of people are using the process. What better way to advertise a 4x5 or an 8x10 back than to build a 20x24 like the Polaroid Corporation did? And so that's what I did over the last half a year, maybe. And then I got to use it, but we'll talk about that later. Yeah, okay. Should we? I mean, that's sort of like the backstory. Should we go to questions? Are there questions, Eric?
There is one question, and that is my wonderful co-host Andrew is asking: are you using any RA4 chemicals in this process? As we all know, he has just started printing with RA4, so this is near and dear to his heart.
Yes. So there's two processes, right? There's black and white and color. In the black and white process, I don't use any RA4 chemistry. And like for reference, for those like wanting to do this instead of giving like the technical lecture, there's two videos under Cameradactyl on YouTube that explain it. And Matt Marash has made a couple of videos. Am I making that noise?
No, I'm gonna find who is.
I think everybody's muted. I think it might be me. Sorry, guys. Test. Oh,
no, you're fine. It's not everybody's muted.
Okay. So, yeah, the RA4 reversal process, the basic idea is that you take a picture which would ordinarily be a negative on RA4 paper, which is basically like C41 film, but on a paper backing and, you know, different concentrations of things. And then you develop that paper negative in a black and white developer, which, you know, reacts with the silver salts, but it doesn't give any dyes to the dye couplers in the paper, right? So you just get a black and white negative on color paper. And that negative takes up physically the space and the potential grains of the negative image. And what's left is all of the silvers and dye couplers to form a positive image, except those are not excited. And so at the point where you develop it, you you know, put it through stop bath, expose it to light, and now the positive image can be excited by light, and you get like a latent positive image, and then you develop all that in RA4 color chemistry as normal, and what you're left over with is just a color positive.
Graham Young is wondering, is it easier to do the color version or the black and white version?
I don't know about easier. I need more practice with everything for sure. Black and white is much more flexible in many ways. Like it's much easier to shoot outdoors or in mixed lighting. It also just takes a little bit longer.
And then, actually, and I can, for those who haven't done the pure black and white process, you can also do it with RC paper, which I've been playing with a little bit, that Joe and Ethan have done, which includes fairly, not particularly hard to get household chemicals, and is actually kind of fun. I'll get to you 1 second. The person who just asked in chat, but Andrew just raised his hand.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Ethan, back in the day before modern E6 kits were out, you used to have to at some point expose the film to some white light, I think, to do that reversal process. So with your self-developing back, which I'm really annoyed that you haven't shown one yet, but you know, you need to find one.
There's one in the mail for you.
Well, so you claim. You've thrown me now. Yeah. So at some point, so you squirt some, I don't know, you squirt some black and white developer in there, and then your you then have to expose that to light, do you somehow or not?
You do. So you develop in black and white, and then you stop it, right? So nothing can further develop, and then you hit it with light. And so the stuff that's been reacted with the developer, right? The stuff that's turned black is no longer photosensitive; it's turned black, right?
Right.
And the stuff that turns white, or that stays white, is the paper base. That then is flooded with light, but since it's been stopped or it's in the stop bath, it's not going to develop. So what you have is like a black and white negative and a latent positive.
Right. And then you stick some RA4 chemicals in, do you? Is that to?
Yep. Then you develop
to
the latent
excite
positive
the
and
dye
color.
couplers. Am I using the right phrase?
I
don't know what you do.
You hit them with light, right?
You excite them.
That excites
or
them,
you
does it?
develop their coupled silver salts, which then you bleach
Okay.
out, and you leave only the dyes and maybe their couplers. I am not a chemist.
No, me
I'm
neither.
going to stick with
No.
excite. I think excite
Yeah.
is a good proactive. You get to excite them because otherwise they're bored, really. And who wants bored dye couplers?
As long as an idiot like me can use it, Ethan, that's all I need to worry about.
You can, absolutely. Like if you
Thank
do
you
an
very much.
RA4 print and you can
Well,
take
RA4, yeah, that seems fairly straightforward, RA4.
You'll note he didn't disagree when you said idiot. Anyways, Mike Suhor has a question. Do you have any suggestions on reducing modeling? I'm assuming, Mike, in the color?
Yeah, so
closet?
hey, I mean, do you guys want to get real technical here? In which case, who is this that asked? Mike Suhor. I hope I'm saying that
or
right.
Sahor. I mean, there's tomato, tomato.
Mike, would you unmute yourself and can we have a conversation about this?
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, thanks for tagging me in here. I follow Ethan's work, and this is my first time listening to the podcast here. So,
cool.
But I have some experience with RA4 reversal myself, and one of the the caveats of the process is modeling in areas primarily that don't have texture. So in a studio setting or things like that. So I know that's one thing that besides in-camera exposure, RA4 reversal process would also be great for printing slides. But modeling is something that's just the downside of the process. So.
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to tell you everything I know and everything I'm curious about. This is one of the advances that I think the internet might have more time and energy than me to actually investigate all of these things and see where it leads and what other questions they might have. But what I do know about it is there are. So when I take a picture, after I develop the picture in black and white developer and stop it, at that point I can look at it in the light. And I have identified that modeling in the black and white negative, right? So we know that it has to originate from part of the process between, exposure and stop bath. And I don't think it's exposure because I think we could take, and I have taken plenty of photos on black and white paper or film, black and white or color, and I don't get that effect. So I don't think it has anything to do with the lens, camera, shutter, yada, yada. And so I think it has to do with the reaction of the exposed paper, either with the black and white developer or the stop bath. I have a couple of theories as to what's going on. I think it's something like reticulation, where the silver salts that have been excited by light and can, interact with the developer, they're doing work, right? They're moving energy, and they can bunch as they're excited and move towards each other or away from each other, and so I think on some level either, and this is my guess, right? I wouldn't bet my life on it, but I think the reticulation is probably caused by the black and white developer acting on that paper. Now it could be the stop bath, but I don't think so for a number of reasons. We'll get into that later, but let me make a couple of suggestions as to what I might try to remove that that sort of reticulation is, one, a pre-soak. I think getting all of the gel nice and loose may either cause less differentiation in the way that it's acted on by the, might cause a more uniform development at the beginning, right? And that might not violently move the silver particles in the gel. I don't know that that's the case, but it's something I would try, right? Temperature control. So I would assume that the hotter that temperature is, the faster it's going to act and the more likely it is to reticulate, but there might be a cold effect. The other thing is dilution, right? So as you have a more and more dilute first developer, which is a black and white developer, you may find that that action happens more slowly and gradually and doesn't reticulate as much. Again, these are theories that I'm proposing that I have only done, partial informal tests. I have not sat down and actually mapped it out and done the work through it in a lab notebook. I see Dave Walker's here. He and I also have some things that we're interested in that Dave proposed that's very smart, but I don't have the sort of time, energy, and wherewithal to go through and test everything in the way, to properly suss out what's going on. So those are my ideas of what you might try: is dilution, time, temperature, high and low, and but controlled either way, and a pre-soak, and also controlling the temperature of the pre-soak, probably to match the developer. And then the last thing, which I think is pretty unlikely but possible, is that I have heard stories of thin emulsions getting blown out by concentrated stop baths in like little pinholes. I haven't really experienced this myself, but if that is true, it's possible that the stop bath is acting very quickly and causing some silver salts to bunch or degrade or be blown off the emulsion. I don't know which is the case. I assume that this is not what's going on, but also, one might try this with a very mild stop or just water. And in which case, if you wanted to go really crazy, maybe control and at least monitor the pH of the water that you're using to stop, because in your first development, you're going to completion anyway, and so you could use water to stop if you had a lot of time. And I think that would be a good way of, at least in the beginning, eliminating the stop bath stage from one of the possible causes of reticulation. So I would start there. And then Mike, I hope you have your work cut out for you. I hope you come back to me with definitive proof of what causes this reticulation and how we can get rid of it. My immediate solution is just make bigger prints so it don't matter.
Bigger's always better.
But no, in all seriousness, these are things that I've been thinking about for a long time, and part of what the internet is amazing at is sort of finding these things out with other people who are equally into this sort of thing.
Actually, that part of that answer runs right into Graham Young's question, which is the color process temperature sensitive? Could you develop outside in 45 to 95 degrees equally? Which is a very good question, right? Because this is for automatic, and you could theoretically be shooting in the field, which, depending on where you live, the field is very cold or very warm.
Yeah, so I'm going to break this into 3 questions. Is the color process temperature sensitive? Yes, absolutely. Could you develop outside in 45 or 95 degrees Fahrenheit temperatures? Yes, absolutely. Equally well? No. Yeah, it's temperature sensitive. You have a couple of levers you could pull depending upon, so the whole process is sort of like a multivariable process. A lot of the things you don't really have control over, and some of those things you do have control over. I mostly wind up controlling it with color filters. You certainly could control it with a little bit of how you're developing with the color developer, how you're replenishing it, if you're replenishing it, if you're one-shotting it, if you're keeping it for a while or not keeping it for a while, if you're heating it, if you're filling the top of the bottle with butane or some other, non-oxidizing gas. I mean, like, yes, color is something that I would ideally like to control if I had my own studio, but I think people would get bored of this sort of thing in a couple of weeks. So it needs to move. And so moving color processors with color control for me is not the answer. And I pull a different lever to compensate. But certainly, using a color processor at 98 degrees Fahrenheit is probably like the best way to do it. Although maybe shifting the temperature also shifts the color balance, and because you're not necessarily shooting in daylight or whatever was supposed to come out of your enlarger's halogen bulb, maybe you can compensate also by processing at a wacky temperature. But again, these are things for the community to answer. Yes.
Ooh, Andrew. Okay, Andrew
Yeah,
raised his hand,
Ethan,
and then I'm gonna raise my hand.
Just normal RA4 processing. Obviously, I'm just getting into it, but I'm going to certainly be experimenting at ambient temperature, so sort of 20 degrees and 68 Fahrenheit. And whilst all the instructions say you shouldn't do it, if you read the Kodak data sheets, they talk about a development range from 20 degrees.
Yeah. You can absolutely do it.
Yeah, you can absolutely do it.
It's just harder.
Well, some people report a color cast, maybe some extra yellow in the. I mean, I'm now talking about printing in the enlarger, so you've got a bit of yellow. You can just substitute it with. You can just filter out the yellow, add some more yellow into the filter pack, or take out a couple of things. I'm getting my head around color wheels, but so you can correct it. And folks have used. The ADOX material. There's an ADOX RA4. Kodak does one, which I think is a bit cheaper liter for liter, and folks report, really good results at ambient temperature. So but
yeah, I mean, I've been using ambient temperature in these backs. I have no energy left to haul heaters for 5 gallons of chemistry at a time.
No, absolutely. I mean, your process out with your 20 by 24, anybody using a self-developing back that you're going to be marketing, you're going to be using chemicals at ambient temperature, I would guess. Then it becomes a time factor, really, so 45 seconds for the normal RA4
no, you know
process.
What? It might become a time factor for you doing a normal RA4 process, or if you were shooting at color negative in one of these backs, which is entirely possible. But for a reversal process, it actually is not time sensitive in that you can't really overdevelop either in the first or the second stage, because they basically go to completion. So like if I do a workshop, I tell people like 3 minutes in this thing, but really I'm thinking in my head 1 minute and 15 seconds. But if I tell them 3 minutes, nobody's going to underdevelop, and underdeveloping certainly makes, and that's another lever you could potentially pull to control the process, but I don't like doing it like that. If you just do everything to completion, it becomes much more user friendly out in the field, right? If you're not trying to hit perfect times, and you don't have to.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I have a question off of the technical stuff about the reversal process and whatnot. And that really centers around the creative process, right? Like when you and I talked months and months ago, and you showed me the very first 4x5 prototype, you talked developing back, right? We discussed a few things. One of them was essentially the process of scaling, right? How you start small, build that version, build until you get to the big kahuna, the 20 by 24. So I guess I'm curious, instead of talking about the chemical process, more about the sort of general process of what goes through your head. What goes through that head when you strike upon something like this, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to make this. Like, what does that look like? What strikes your fancy, right? And then from there, how do you plot out, actually bring it through to fruition? Because you brought quite a few, and I'll say this slightly tongue-in-cheek, seemingly random things through to fruition. But at the same time, you once told me that you're not going to do anything unless it's commercially viable. And so those two
or
things
at least a little bit.
Yeah, right. And so those two things to me are a little bit at odds. But also, I'm just curious, like, what goes on up there? And I say that with affection.
Oh, I appreciate it. Yeah, so most of the things I work on are things that strike me personally that I would like to work on, either because it's an interesting challenge or an interesting camera or device. It's not always the case if you're making beer can counting machines. You know, it's not as intellectually interesting, but you know, when I think of something that I want to do, if I think it can be done, right, there's always a couple of parts of it that I'm not sure about. And I've learned long time ago is that when you start like an engineering project, you want to start at the pinch points. You want to start at like your unknowns. So I once built this densitometer when I was sort of getting into programming and like a little bit of mechatronics. And I wound up spending months and months, and I had built like a really wonderful Wi-Fi data logging system, but ultimately I couldn't get a pressure sensor for a reasonable enough price that was within 1 decimal point of precision that I needed. And so what happened was I spent, you know, months and months and months working on this thing, improving the things that I knew that I could do that were already done out there. I wasn't inventing data loggers, right? But and it also had to do with waiting for parts from AliExpress. But the point was, eventually I found the choke point, and it was an unsurmountable wall to me without spending more money than the product was worth. And so when I think of something that I want to do, I'll generally stop and sketch it out, right? And I want to do is either like a camera I want to use, or that I would like somebody to use, but also that I think I could sell enough of that it would cover, you know, the cost of my time. Because going into a project, you know, it's at least going to take a week at best, but like probably, you know, most of my projects eat months, half a year, something like that. And so if it like satisfies that those two criteria, I'll draw some sketches. I'll draw some sketches of all sorts of things that won't ever come to fruition. But at that point, I'll think about like what goes into this system, right? So for the 20 by 24, that was, you know, building a camera, finding a lens, building a back that would hold and develop a image, and sort of nailing down a process that I could use with that camera, right? And so we spent years kind of tinkering around with the process and getting good at that, because that was like the big pinch point. I knew I could build a 20 by 24 camera. Yes, it has some, you know, sort of material science complexities that a 4x5 does not have, but for the most part, it's a 4x5, just, you know, 128 times bigger or something. You know, I didn't know about the backs, right? That those had to be built at least on some scale, like to see that they worked, right? And we started with an 8x10. And once that was done, like it was proven to me enough that it could be done at a larger scale to sort of move on to build a camera, because you can't really test a 20 by 24 back without a camera to test it in, but you can't really build a camera until you've at least modeled the back, because the two of them have to fit together. And so it sort of becomes this circular thing of like, what is the hurdles? What are the hurdles in the project? What can you, at least on like a scale level, like, you know, normally I'll build 7 or 8 cameras before I have a working camera, but I can't do that at 20 by 24.
I was going to say, if there's 7 or 8 of those, like, you know, Andrew, myself, and Simon will take 3 of them.
Yeah, no, I mean, it just like one barely fits in my shop, let alone like expanded. And so it had to be torn down before rebuilding, which is something that I didn't like. I usually like to at least have one prior prototype to look at while I'm building the next one. But I guess the point is, before embarking on something like that, I wanted to prove to myself, at least at usable scales, that like certain designs were viable. then, yeah, I mean, is that did I just go on a tangent there, or is that an
Well,
answer
it was
to
a
your
fairly
question?
tangential question, right? So no, I think that was good. But then, you also have, you go off and you might spend, a month or 2 months or whatever, 3 months chasing this, but you also have a certain number of commercial lines as Cameradactyl, things of that nature, right? So how do you maintain like those, for lack of a better term, those commercial interests that directly pay the shop and all that other sort of stuff while chasing these other things, when, unless I'm mistaken, like you're a one-man operation?
Yeah, I
Right.
mean, sometimes I have help running the laser, and I'd like to get some more help running the print farm. And there's I'm kind of at the point where I could expand a little bit. I got a little bit more on my plate than I really would care to have right now, and that prevents me from taking the time to expand, but also is why I have too much on my plate. So it's a little bit of a circular thing that I'm working on. Maybe I'm not the best at, but all of these things that I get into, like eventually the 20x24 will be a product. That's the only product, like the camera and the back, that I would have to charge a ridiculous amount to build such a thing in such a ridiculous space. Like that thing needs 1,000 square feet just for assembly, right? My shop is 800 square feet. And so at some point that will become a product, but already, the 4x5s, here are some of the buckets for them. There's, a bucket for an 8x10 and some parts over here. Like I have about 100 of these partially assembled, like ready to go. And so at least originally the thought was, the 20x24, at least for now, can just be an advertising thing. Like Polaroid was not selling their 20x24, but it sold a lot of pack film,
Yeah.
And I thought I'd do the same, and it would be like a fun thing to do. And yeah, I mean, it is.
But then you went to
a commercial
Brooklyn.
thing.
Yeah, and it blew up. Did that take you by surprise, by the way? Like, I
Yeah.
didn't even know you were heading out to Brooklyn, and all of a sudden I just saw like everywhere. It's just like, the Brooklyn Film Festival, yay! And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I see Ethan. He's hard to miss. Huge beard, like he's hard to miss. And all of a sudden it's just like huge RA4 positive prints, and people are losing their bloody, since I've had a bunch of Brits on the call, losing their bloody minds. And like, you're there for a month, right? Was there some sort of light bulb moment where you're like, oh shit, this is a thing?
Yeah, so it went a lot better than originally thought. And I talked about this with Graham and Nick on the Homemade Camera podcast a little bit. It's like just trying to figure out how to make such a thing work. I thought originally I'd take it on the West Coast to tour it, right? And like maybe I'd take some portraits or whatever, and it would like cover the cost of itself. I didn't really understand the full cost of running such a camera when I built it. But like, I am not a marketing genius, nor am I famous enough to do such a thing on my own at this point. But like, I've been very lucky to get to work with Kyle at Brooklyn Film Camera, who is like a marketing juggernaut and runs a much bigger company than me. And he was opening these studios, Wyckoff Windows, this is where I got this hat, and sent me an invite as I was planning to go to LA and San Francisco. And basically it was like, he gave me a really great deal on the studio, and he could do a lot of like the marketing and logistics, and like lend me people to load backs or shake film trays or check people in. And like it was it was like an event by Brooklyn Film Camera at Wyckoff Windows where I was a photographer, right? Like,
Right.
or and so, yeah, I was extremely surprised that it kind of blew up on Instagram. Like, I feel like Kim Kardashian because I picked up like 1,000 followers. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know how much I could, like, in any other circle say like it blew up on Instagram because I got 400 likes. I don't. But I think at least the film photo community really dug it. we sold out in New York, which is, something that I would not have expected, but it was really good. And so, yeah, I would like to do it again eventually. I'm going to run a Kickstarter to do it because I'll have to buy like a commercial studio in LA to do it. So, it's going to be a little tricky, but I will try.
Ethan, do you know if all Polaroid 20x24 stock is that all gone now? Because there was 2 or 3 cameras, weren't there, around the States mainly, and they still would do. I mean, you mentioned Elsa Dorfman was doing it, but I didn't know if all that material is gone now. So this is a really interesting alternative.
Yeah, so I think Super Sense probably bought a lot of it up to chop up and make it into one instant.
Okay.
And I think there's some around maybe in Austria, but like what is left is very old now. It's not like what is left, if there is any left, is not like peak beautiful Polaroids at this point. It's 20, 30-year-old film, I think. But yeah, I'm not sure what exists and what doesn't, but I don't think it exists.
No.
Right. And then I guess one last question for me, and then I guess we're getting pretty close. Are we getting fairly close to the hour point? I have not been keeping track. I'm a horrible host. But we might get close to the point where to see if there's any more questions from the group or take a short break. And that is, you're, at least as of lately, primarily known as a manufacturer, right? Cameradactyl, like your homemade camera podcast, all that sort of stuff. And then all of a sudden you're spending weeks on end just shooting, straight up shooting, nothing more than shooting. And obviously you're originally, at some point you were interested in taking photographs, right? Like most of us. What was that? Like all of a sudden you went from running laser and printer farms and whatever else, all of a sudden, oh shit, I'm a studio portrait photographer for weeks on end, unendingly, and having to produce really nice, unique portraits out of the blue with like, how was that for you?
Well, it was exhausting. It is something that I think I could get better at. It's also something, to be fair, I don't really, share this on Instagram so much, but like I've been interested in taking portraits since I was 14, 15 years old. Like the giant camera has its own challenges, right? And I wish I was better at portrait photography, but don't we all? I think like even the best, and maybe especially the best, wish they are better. Is how you get there. But yeah, it was, I thought this would be like a advertising tool for weird, obscure camera accessories, like self-developing backs for obscure processes by like maybe a third of the people in this room and twice that worldwide,
Right.
But as it turns out, like people really much more prefer photos of themselves or their loved ones or their dogs. And it's something that like obviously has more of a universal like appeal or relatability than me selling like parts like this thing, which I'll show you later. Not everybody needs this thing, but a lot of people like photos of themselves. Anyway, it was surprising to me. When I was 19, I wanted to be a photographer of any sort, and I like dropped out of school and made $7,000 that whole year and just was miserable and never took one photo that I liked. And later on, when I had some sort of professional career and didn't have to take photos to make a living, I really loved doing that, and I never thought that I would take photos for business again. It was just a thing I did for me. I didn't really even share them on the internet, but yeah, I suddenly like just doing these demos found myself as like a medium sought after photographer in this very specific corner of the internet. And so like it's a dream come true, but also 15 years after I forgot about that dream entirely. So it was really nice. I don't think that that's what I want to do with myself 100% of the time. I'd love to, spend a couple of months a year just taking photos. That would be great. But I have found, a new love of making cameras and making people use them and seeing what they make out of them. And yeah, I could work on my life balance, but maybe I won't have that really to balance out, because maybe nobody will ever again pay for me to go take a photo of any sort, and so that would be fine too. I got cameras to build, scanners to make, but yeah, I hope I get to do a little bit more of it. That answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Graham Young has a question. The intensity of light is very important in this process. What do you think of the limitations of an instant back from a creative point of view?
Sorry, Graham, can you unmute yourself? I have a question about your question.
Oh, snap.
Yeah.
Sorry, by instant back, we've
the back you're talking about.
I see,
not necessarily the 20 by 24, but the
right. Yeah, and I've been
8 by
playing
10.
around with this Lomo graph lock back, which I absolutely love, and we talked a little bit about it. I was just unsure which which we were talking about. Yeah, so I think for me, I have very little desire to try and shoot color outdoors on an instant back like all day long. I would love to like go spend a day and take one photo with an instant back, right, and just shoot until I got the color right. But that could take me a day, and maybe I would make like one nice photo. But I don't think like going around and shooting with just like a one of these things. Hold on. My samples are too far away. Yeah, like so this is a handheld 4x5 that's mated to those backs. It has this thicker screen, and like I could easily see and have gone around and shot with the black and white reversal or Ilford Harman on these guys. But color, I really enjoy working with a strobe, because then I can control color much easier. And so like when I'm in the studio at 4x5, I really like the Afghan box camera. At 8x10, I really like the self-developing back. I don't really have any desire to own an Afghan box camera that's 8x10. It's just too big. But yeah, I think there's some room to figure out like how to walk around with like two Sunpack 622s or a lot of Vivitar strobes and work that out. But it would be tough, one, to get enough light through handle potato masher strobes, or two, to reliably color balance color outside, like moving around.
What's the equivalent speed for the color paper? Because I know like black and white paper is usually whatever 3, 6, whatever, depending on your process. But color,
correct. How
do you rate that?
Interestingly enough, I have been able to shoot RA4 paper, like just Fuji Crystal Archive, at ISO 125 outdoors. There's a caveat though.
The foo?
Yeah. So that was that was at that point, I think, all UV. So I'm in the high desert. We're all in the high desert today. There's, the densest part of the atmosphere between, let's say, Graham at sea level and me is below me. And so we had a lot of UV light. And I think that paper, I haven't actually checked the tone or the response curve of it, but I think it is pretty, receptive to UV light in a way that it is like 10 times more receptive to UV light than to, indoor or even strobe light. And the reason why I say this is because like outdoors, I have even expose this thing at like ISO 125, whereas indoors I'm exposing it through a filter at something like ISO 1 or 3, and without a filter maybe 12 to 15. So yeah, I mean, the paper is a little wacky. I don't think it's useful at ISO 125 because unless you're just like going to use it for black and white negatives, right? Like, but the whole image is like kind of purple when you're exposing in that UV range. It's weird. It's something I, could get a better handle on for sure. There's some people who are doing outdoor work on this process pretty well. The people who come to mind are Sam Traxel, who works for Ars Imago. We had him on the Homemade Camera podcast a while ago. He built a 16 by 20 for that process, and he seemed to be getting, good colors outside, if not faithful colors outside. But I found his work very pleasing. And then also Matt Marash and Matt's done some really good stuff recently that's like outdoor with flash fill that's well balanced. And again, like, this process is never giving you faithful colors everywhere, but if it's a portrait, for me the most important thing is like somebody's skin tone and color. But Sam shot a lot of like still lives or landscapes. Either way, like, so long as the thing that you want is the right color, I just kind of let everything else fall where it.
You can always fix it in post.
Yes.
Sorry, not sorry.
No, you can't.
And there's the mute button for Graham. All right. So if there aren't any other questions, I think we're just about, Andrew, Simon, are we pretty close to the 1 hour mark for a first minor nature break, coffee break?
I think we've come to that point. I mean, certainly one thing I've noticed is the agenda's gone out the window.
What agenda?
Yeah, which is fair enough. But I think that as much as you've been reading people's questions that have gone into the chat, I think it's worth just opening it up to everybody that's here. If there's anybody that's got something that they haven't put into the chat that they may wish to ask a question, to just go ahead and or put your hand up in if you find that button. So I just want to give people an opportunity, if there's anybody out there that wants to ask any further questions on what we've spoken about to Ethan so far. You there? No. Okay. Okay, so that's fair enough. So yeah, unless Andrew, have you got anything you might want to add before we take a little break?
No, I was going to ask that question that Eric asked about the speed of paper.
Yeah, 125.
That's obviously, you can, this is an interesting process, but you've got Instax at 600, in a Graphlot back, or a back for your RB67 or whatever. So that's imminently hand holdable for street portraits, that sort of thing. But this is a different mindset, isn't it? Really.
Actually, there was a point on that that you're making about outside at altitude and being more UV available. And yeah, I can see how that could be useful in black and white photography. And then you were saying though it everything turns a bit purple or violet even. It just hurts in my head really, because it's obviously, if it's infrared light, then it's a different frequency, and that must interfere with the paper in a different way to other frequency light. And I would have thought that different colors that you get are down to a mix of this is going well above where I can actually talk with any kind of confidence, but the different wavelengths of light correspond with different colors. So are you just getting a lot of ultraviolet which manifests itself in this purpley hue, but are you also still getting other stuff that you wouldn't normally get at that ISO range, if that makes any kind of sense at all?
Yeah, I mean, so I think that my rough understanding of the way it works is that each of the color layers on the paper are excitable by a certain range of wavelengths of light, and those will eventually, after developed, like trigger a dye coupler that'll pick up a certain dye from the developer. And so the available dyes in the developer versus the input spectrum for that color layer on the paper, I think, are not always a one-to-one, right? So the input spectrum might be sensitive to something other than what its output spectrum of coupled dyes are. And so I think the UV is getting picked up maybe by the blues and the reds, or whatever combination of actual layers that are in there. But obviously there's no UV dye that we don't see it. But part of the output of the color spectrum that we can see is influenced by the UV spectrum coming in. And again, is this something that I can say with 100% confidence? No, these are suspicions of mine, my learnings.
Yeah.
Well, and also you have to take into factor whatever your lens coatings are, right? Because modern lenses that have coatings, like if you try to go shoot very UV reliant processes, they cut down on the UV light.
Doesn't all glass stop UV though? Isn't
Not all
glass.
glass.
But you don't get sunburnt behind glass.
Modern glass. Modern
depends
glass
on.
does.
Okay.
Yeah, if you go into a greenhouse and use greenhouse glass, you'll get sunburn behind that.
Yeah.
Well,
Exactly.
don't go in a greenhouse.
Yeah. So when I'm buying lens elements to build optical elements to build lenses with, you can get coated and uncoated. And so if I'm trying to shoot a UV heavy process, then uncoated lenses are better.
Okay.
And Mike mentions not only lens coatings, but some flash bulbs also have UV coatings. Correct. And Sandy Lynch, that's it, right?
Yeah.
Don't call him Sandy.
Okay.
Yeah. Me again, Sandaya. I just wanted to say, thinking about what you're saying there, Ethan, about UV, my only experience is shooting at high altitude in the Himalayas with black and white Ilford film. And what I didn't know at the time is, I found out later, that you really needed to have an orange filter to bring back the necessary contrast, because otherwise you get film very washed out. Now, the Himalayas are not the same as where you are, but if it is a UV issue at high altitude, and if an orange filter would help with black and white, is it not the case then that color paper would also need some sort of filter there?
Yeah, so I am using primarily orange and red filters and yellow filters to get correct color in this process. I was just finding there was no amount of filtration that would quite do it. I have seen it done. I have come close to it here and there, but it is tough. I probably should just get some sort of UV diode for testing different pieces of glass, and maybe try with some UV filters outdoors. I think it's the color process in particular is pretty limiting in sort of handhold ability. That being said, the black and white process is perfectly reasonable so long as you have a pressed lens or that sort of thing. But yeah.
And I just put into the chat the Matt Marash video, which includes him doing some RA4 stuff outside. Since we mentioned him earlier. Or actually, I take that back. Ethan mentioned earlier.
We also have Dave Khrushchev now, who has also done a lot of work in RA4 reversal processes that are very good. Just in time for the break.
I was just going to say, welcome, and we'll see you in 10 minutes. No. Simon?
Well, yeah, that's it, really. So, yeah. So welcome, Dave, and we'll see you in 10 minutes. I think we've come to the end of section one. However we manage that, and like I said, the agenda went completely haywire there.
Sorry.
My fault.
No, that's okay. So we have other things that we want to talk about. I think now is a good time just to take like I said, we'll take 10 minutes, give people a chance to do whatever it is they may need to do. The feed is still live. People can talk to each other in this time. There's no problem at all with that. But officially 10 minutes time, we'll start up again. So thank you for being with us in the first part, and we'll be back soon.
Talk soon. I don't have hold music
Be right back.
because I'm not that fancy, but see you in a second or 10 minutes. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, I have the mic right by my face.
Slurp. That's now officially on the recording, as well as my vocal interpretation of it.
Cool.
I do my best. Do my best.
You cut out the breaks.
Huh?
You cut out.
No. Well, I might, since nobody's chatting.
Right.
If there's any fun byplay. Question about the instant the 4x5 back. Is that mated specifically to yours, or is it like a graph lock sizing, or?
Yeah. Hang on, I'll grab some.
I also love the fact, ladies and gentlemen, that I am not the only person with random boxes of crap upon counters in my workshop.
Is my mic any better this time?
Yes. You sound so sad about it. Is my mic? Yes, it is.
Yeah. Well, so, I've had problems, as everybody has, with being in tons of meetings.
Oh, yeah, dude.
And then, it came through partway through, a week of really important ones. And hey, nobody can actually hear you on this one or that. It's been, it's been a constant struggle. So coming up here, at least, you guys.
You're much more legible. You're much more legible. It's not the greatest. It's not the greatest voice quality, but you're not sounding like a robot anymore.
Yeah, well, that could be down to being a perfect mimic of what it actually sounds like.
No. Although, I mean, I actually spent some money on trying to get a mic for the podcast, and then Simon and Andrew are like, "The hell are you using?" And I'm like, "I actually bought a mic," and they're like, "It's crap." I'm like, "Oh," and I just went back to the laptop mic.
Yeah.
Sorry. Ooh, Ethan, do you have the back? Let me see the back. I want to see the back because I want to know what the hell camera I'm going to put this thing on.
Yeah, so it's a standard 4x5 film holder size. It's just a different depth, right? So much like the Lomograph lock back, I'll sell shims, or in fact, just straight up focusing screens that are at the right registration distance, right? So that's just a thick screen or a thick spacer before the screen. Yeah, so any 4x5 camera, although I make some that are, will be native to this thing. The other thing that I noticed, though, is that the Lomograph lock shim is 2 millimeters off from my shim. So I think before I actually release them, I'll just standardize to that thickness. So that, not only could you use this thing in a 4x5, you can use the Lomograph lock for more, fast, handheld stuff.
Right. Okay, so I should be able to slide that into the box camera that I built, I think.
Yeah, I mean, almost definitely. The one thing is how much opening does your film holder have, and it fits perfectly well in a graph locks or a graph lock. This is the Lomograph lock shim. It's actually bigger than my shim, but I will make my shim that size. And then, oops, this thing popped off. There we go. There. So, it's in a graph lock back.
Which means I should also be able to use it with my Intrepid when I get it back.
Yeah, so we've been using them on Joe's Intrepid. We have a lot of these sort of elastic bands for things that don't have graph lock locks, that can just, it's kind of what Intrepid uses and what I use to create springbacks. It's much more sort of durable and easy to make.
Cool. Yeah. I can't wait to get mine, especially now that you helped me figure out the black and white process. Although I haven't been able to reverse engineer the messed up part of the black and white process that I was doing that I want to recreate when I want to, but that's a separate conversation you and I can have. over whiskey, actually, when you come out to San Francisco to set up your month of studio sessions.
Great. Hey, are we on part 2 already?
I think you and I are just shooting the shit while we wait for
Okay.
Andrew and Simon, who are really the brains behind this operation. And I'm just
getting
like
texts from Andrew and Simon.
Yeah.
Apparently, I'm supposed to be introducing part 2, but part 2 isn't quite what I thought part 2 was going to be now, so I'm not really sure what I'm introducing.
Yeah, we kind of went all over, but so...
are we all? I'm not 100% sure that we're all backwards. I see I don't see many moving pictures in front of me.
No, this is where people when you have breaks and things like this, where people decide to skedaddle off,
right?
And
hope
no one notices their absence.
Oh, and Joseph Brunges has joined us, which is great timing.
Yeah,
perfect timing.
How about how about can we poll the audience for a topic for part 2? Is like we could either talk about actually shooting with the camera for a month and trying to shoot with it later, and I could show some photos of that, or we could just talk about like Instax.
Yeah, I'll create a poll.
I'd certainly like to talk more about your experience, of shooting that 20 by 24, the people you met, the experiences, and just the whole what it's like to be on the road with such a huge camera. But then, that's just me.
Right. So I just launched the poll, which is what is part 2? Shooting for a month or Instax?
This isn't supposed to be a democracy,
Well, why not?
But Joseph, we're very pleased that you've joined us because I've turned my background off because the background interferes with cameras. So Simon and I, but not Eric, were sent these lovely Ambro type coasters, or I can't call it a beer mat really, but it's doing a sterling job of holding my red wine.
It's a little early for me, but yeah, I'm glad you like them.
And it's got the LFPP logo on, and it's a lovely glass.
Yeah, I started Amber
beer mat
a couple ago for friends and stuff, and they turned out to be pretty fun.
They're
It's nice
super cool.
images on the under the bottom of the glass, so you won't damage the image at all because the top glass is.
Mm-hmm.
It's. I was going to say. I mean, as Andrew said, I have one too. Unfortunately, I was hoping to try and actually have a camera working today, but I failed, including appear to have broken a computer trying to actually get a camera to work. So I had to go back to square one.
It was working for a hot 5 minutes.
It was, and it was great.
Like a Russian sniper scope lens. It was very. I felt very James Bondy.
Well, Eric, I apologize. I actually made those before you joined the show, so that's why there's not for you yet.
Dude, no worries at all. It's okay. I'm still on probation.
Oh, I've got to say, yeah, that's right. You still haven't actually delivered on what you said you were going to deliver.
I deliver. I said,
yeah. Well, there you go.
Your lopsod, Eric. You know what lopsod is?
No, please.
Long promises, short on delivery.
Oh.
That's what my fiance says.
But back to Joseph's gift and the Amber types. I've got mine in front of me at the moment, and apart from that, I absolutely love it. And I wanted to show people as well, but fortunately Andrew's been able to do that. And mine's the same or very similar, but obviously these things are going to be unique. So they're ever so slightly differently, but I've shown it to a few people in reality who have been blown away by it. They just think it's really cool, and I also shared it with a few select people on the internet, including Ethan, who was knocked out by it as well. So yeah, thank you very, very much for this. It's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful.
Want one? Send me a logo that'll fit on a square. I'll make you one.
Sorry, could you repeat that, please, Joseph?
Ethan, if you have a logo that you want put on one, I'll make you one.
Sweet.
And that'll give me an excuse to make Eric's at the same time.
Ethan, you can unmute yourself. You can speak. We don't mind.
Yes, that would be great. Thank you.
The only vulnerable part of them is that black paint on the bottom. It's a couple layers, but if you really scratched at it, then you could essentially get to the image. But it's varnished underneath that too, so you got varnish and a couple layers of paint, so it should be good to go for a while.
Joby, are you just shooting them off of a screen, or are you printing them out and then shooting a macro of them?
I made a digital interpositor using Pictorico paper, Well, overhead transparency.
Oh, and then contact print
that, and then larger, and then project down onto a blank.
Cool.
They have a little bit. I mean, they don't look exactly like a tintype. I mean, graphics look a lot better than images do because you get a little. The Pictorico has a little bit of grain to it because of the way a printer prints on it. So if you printing bigger things actually looks better than printing smaller things because the grain is less pronounced. But the things like graphics, like the logos and things, look really, really good. And you can invert them, so you can either have one, like when I started out, I made some for the FPP, and I took their logo and I did one where the logo was black and the background was white, and then I flipped it so that the opposite of that, and made it so you had a pair. You had a negative, one was a negative the other, and because it's graphics, it looked really cool as a pair.
Cool. So we have, at least participation-wise, we have 3 votes for shooting for a month, 0 votes for Instax, and 10 complete non-votes. So,
those are all for me to go home. I am home.
You do. You live in that workshop. Every time I'm like, hey, what's going on? You're like, I'm in the workshop.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that, whatever that actually means in terms of the content. Andrew, Simon, what do you think? I mean, again, I'm just a talent. I'm just a filler.
I must admit, I actually thought we'd already started, so
okay.
I think we should just carry on and hand over to Andrew, I think.
All
right. Okay.
Fire in the hole. Wine in the glass.
Yeah. So tell us more then about a month on the road with the big Bertha.
All right. So I got on the road about 5 days before I showed up in New York. I put everything into and filled my Ford E150 cargo van. And my girlfriend and I was dropping her off in Wisconsin, which was 350 miles out of the way. But like when you're going to drive 4,800 miles in a month, it doesn't really matter. And also I could pick up some strobe packs in Peoria from a guy closing his studios. He's a very nice man named Paul. I hope we cross paths again. But we drove across Texas and Oklahoma. First, when I got an oil change, they left the overflow bottle on my radiator open, so I started to overheat in San John in west or eastern New Mexico, kind of out on the plains. And so I dealt with that and bought a bunch of extra coolant, but didn't have to use it for the rest of the 4,800 miles. And then my van doesn't have AC, so and it was very loud. It was like 100 degrees through Texas and Oklahoma. And at some point, Laura took like one of my dress shirts and poured water on it and just like put it over her body for evaporative cooling. We tried to listen to a podcast. It was too loud for that. And we got stuck in traffic in Oklahoma. It was like a whole adventure, which, you don't think of as like part of photography, but using a camera that is too big to fly with is, it's going to involve a bunch of car repair and just driving. That first night we slept for 2 hours in a rest stop in Missouri. I slept with my feet out the window of the van, and Laura had the passenger seat, which went down. The next morning we got up and made it to Peoria, bought another 400 or 500 pounds worth of strobes, and then I dropped Laura off at her parents'. I slept for a day, and then I thought like in the next day I would hit New York because it's a 13-14 hour drive. It's a piece of cake. But there was like construction all through Indiana, and then a rainstorm in Ohio and Pennsylvania, and my car broke down again my van broke down in a Ohio rest stop. I think there was a short in my rear tail brake light, which I dealt with in about an hour or two. And then I thought I was going to get there in time, but then it was just like this insane rainstorm in Pennsylvania. So I wound up hanging out at like a Sheetz gas station with a bunch of Amish people waiting for the rain to break. And then, the next day the rain had been coming down so hard, and like the truckers don't care, or a lot of them don't care, and there was just overturned tractor trailer trucks all along I-80, and I was stopped next to a pig truck. It was like a whole thing. It took me 5 days to get to New York. I burned like, you know, well over $1,000 worth of gas and oil doing it. And so anyway, I get to New York. I figured I'd be in there in the morning, but I spent an hour in the Lincoln Tunnel and an hour getting through Midtown, like 10 blocks. And I get there, you know, I'm not in great shape. Kyle from Brooklyn Film Camera meets me there. And then the two of us proceed to like unload an entire van full of gear and load a freight elevator, unload the freight elevator into like what is at that point a construction zone, and like try and push things back and forth. Like I had not showered since I left Wisconsin, and I had changed my shirt right as I got there because I was disgusting. But then within like 20 minutes, we had both sweat through all of our clothes, moving everything. This is, you know, late September in New York. It's like 85 degrees or something. So, you know, it was a funny ordeal to move in. They were still finishing the final touches on the studio when I got there, which meant that they had no window blinds. And since I was using a lens too big for any shutter that I owned, I needed to shoot some advertising shots in a closet where I could block out the window blinds during an exposure, where I'm using a lens cap and some filters to take a picture. And so, you know, that second day, the first day I was too disgusting to take any photos. I needed to go to my dad's house and shower. And I came back the next morning, set up the whole camera in a closet, like, I mean, a big closet, right? But the camera is 6.5 feet long, and you need 6 feet in front of it to take a picture. And so my strobes were just like very cramped, and we were tripping over wires. And I thought, I hope this works so we could make some videos for Instagram, because we haven't sold a ticket yet. And yeah, you know, it worked well enough. I was unable to totally control things in a 4-hour.
So hang on, Ethan, hang on. So you this 5-day epic trip, you turn up into this space that presumably Brooklyn Film Cameras was organized for you, but you hadn't done any, like, the people of New York weren't expecting you. There weren't posters around saying come and have your photo taken, or were you just not convinced that it would work?
No, you know, we did not have. I was convinced that it would work, but also, you know, I'm not going to lie, my heart was in my throat for quite a while, right? So the degree to which it would work, I was unsure of. You know, every time I do it, I get a little bit better at color correcting and controlling the thing. But also, I had no place really to set up this camera in Albuquerque. So I had shot good color stuff at 4x5 and 8x10, and I had shot maybe 3 or 4 frames of black and white in 20x24. So I knew the camera worked, and I knew the process worked, but I had not had the space and opportunity to ever shoot 20x24 color before I showed up in New York.
So this is quite an adventure, really, because you know you've incurred real costs, haven't you, in the actual physical journey? And you're looking now to spend some time in this space, maybe a month, and hopefully recover those costs and make it worth your while. So your advertising started, that was your first thing.
Yeah. So, you know, part of it was I was willing to take the risk because it was Kyle and we're friends and he's never let me down. And, you know, his word is good as gold to me. But also we were sharing some of the risk, right? Like it was his event, and, you know, we got a great deal on the studio because of that. But, yeah, like when I showed up on day one, I was $7,000 in the hole on this project, which is fine. Like I don't think it's necessarily the worst thing to have to work with large budget stuff, so long as somebody will pay for it, or some millions of people will pay for it, or whatever, you know. But yeah, it was nerve-wracking in that, like, I am not good at making marketing material, and I had not done it in front of people before. In fact, I had never done it at that size before. And so we needed to spend a day, one, to shake the camera down, make sure it set up correctly after moving it that far, just jostling around in a shipping blanket in my van bed. But the other thing was like we needed to make marketing. So Kyle and one of his employees, Gabe, came and shot some photos and videos of me doing it. There's I'll show you when we get to the slideshow section some hilarious like dreamy artiste portraits that Kyle did of me. But you know, those were sort of like the first marketing images, and at that point, you know, I was maybe a day late because of my stay in Pennsylvania, and we were really like, we got to move on this marketing, you know, and we were unsure that we would sell really enough to cover the trip, because at that point we were marketing like the week before, 6 days before, but it, you know, surprisingly worked out really well. People were into it, and they came anyway, even on short notice.
Was it mainly on Instagram, or did you advertise elsewhere?
Yeah, so I didn't actually even wind up advertising anything because they sold out so fast by the time so the advertising generally started with Kyle at Brooklyn Film Camera and would get shared around, and then I would like repost or whatever. But like by the time I was on call to, you know, publish some posts about such a thing, not that like my following is that big, but you know, do my part. But they were already just sold out. So
how many what does sold out mean? How many portraits were you kind of committed to at that point?
So we did, so like, because it was so expensive to move across the country and buy the chemistry and the paper, yada yada yada, we couldn't just do like one day or one weekend. So what we did was 2 weekends of like Saturday and Sunday portraits for 10 hours, back to back, no lunch break, and plus like setup and breakdown. So there were 40. Oh, no, we did them at half-hour sessions. So we did 20 a day for 8 days. And then some of those sessions people could double up for, you know, if they paid extra, they get another picture. So that really added to the hustle of actually producing them. And then I did some workshops on Friday. So there was officially going to be like 6 days of work in there, which, you know, ultimately turned into 8 days of work over the course of 3 weeks, which took me 5 weeks by the time I drove out and drove back. So, you know, it was really like having to make hay while the sun is shining after, you know, shooting a project out into the world like that. But I also, you know, got to do some really fun stuff. I traded a day with Eduardo Pavez and Ben Fraternale and Nat Sachebre, all came and just made work with the camera. And then I think the In an Instant YouTube video is out now. The others will come out, you know, sometime when those guys get around to it.
Was that all with one film holder, or did you have multiple ones so you could have one being cleaned while you were using it?
Yeah, so I the week before I left, I frantically made 3 more film holders. So I was traveling with 4, and I generally held one in reserve, and did actually have to repair one that somebody dropped, that somebody might have been me, that had a pretty serious split in it. But I brought 2 4-foot-long tool chests with every glue, adhesive, solvent, gloves, needles, scissors, knives, clippers, whatever. And so I spent an hour one morning and rebuilt one of those film backs. But yeah, you gotta travel with a bunch of them. One was just not going to cut it.
And how long did it take generally to kind of prep one for the next sheet of film? I mean, you have to get all the old chemistry out of it. I mean, do you have to wash it thoroughly, or what's kind of?
Well, it depends. It depends how good a picture you want to make. You know, I think at some point we were hustling past making optimal pictures, and you know, ultimately, like, I think it was fun. Everybody was into, you know, some imperfections here and there. I was very curious about whether or not, you know, the market would bear the actual cost of doing a thing like that at a speed that, you know, because you're burning cash by being in the studio, by having a helper or two, you know, just by being open. And so if you take 2 hours to do a portrait session, what does that actually cost? And so, like, yeah, the more people you have, the faster you can clean and load the backs and develop the backs and not you know, have any downtime at the camera, right? So more people, more backs. That probably helps. Rolling carts the next time. Those backs weigh 16.5 pounds. I would carry 2 of them all day back and forth like this. It's pretty exhausting. But, you know, when we sold another weekend, the problem with doing, so we're doing them in like 30 minutes, and sometimes we'd have to do up to 4 in an hour if people had doubled up back to back, and that was really way too fast. And so what we found was, like, at, I think it was like $135 a picture, we were unable to satisfy everybody, right? We took some really good ones, like some people got an amazing portrait and some people got like a fun experience, and it was not the best portrait I could take, right? But I just didn't have the time or the bandwidth or the help to do it. And so when we had sold out of the first round so fast, and Kyle asked me if I wanted to do a second round, I said, yeah, but I kind of want to see if the market will bear like the actual full market price of running one of these things for 2 hours for a portrait. And it did. We sold out in 3 hours, but at that point I was shooting like $900 portraits. And the problem with that is that you just don't see that many people in a day. And so I don't think my work was any better on the days that I had 2 hours to shoot a portrait. It was just nobody was disappointed by a more expensive portrait that, you know, everybody got something good. I had enough time to throw a few shots in the garbage if I wanted to, you know, I could get something dialed in, but it wasn't as crazy as getting to shoot, you know, 50 pictures in a day or 30 pictures in a day, where some of them are just going to be stunners. And so I think, like, when I do this again, I think in an hour I can guarantee that I'm not going to mess things up. So the people who got the 2 hour sessions at the end, pretty much every one of them walked home with 2 or 3 photos that they would hang. And so in an hour, if I charge for that, I can be confident that I don't have to disappoint anybody, which is really important to me. Like, not making enemies, and like, I want everybody to leave happy, right? And that's less expensive than $900, but it's still pretty expensive to do an hour with like 3 people's time and a studio. And so I think what I will do is do a bunch of those to pay for the bulk of the trip, but also do a bunch of like just open studio nights where I sell tickets trivially, inexpensively, just to limit the number of people, and then just get 20 people through the studio. And I think, you know, the lesson we learned is that it wasn't a mistake having 40 people through the studio in a day, or 50 people. It was a mistake trying to shoot every one of them. And so instead of charging $135 for a portrait and trying to rip one every 3 minutes or 30 minutes, instead I will just, you know, charge whatever it costs to do an hour portrait, and then do a bunch of days that are like $20, come all day, hang out. I may take a picture, I may not take a picture. You can increase your chances by looking crazy. But, you know, other than that, like, then everybody gets to come and hang out and like meet other, you know, film nuts and people who are interested in this sort of thing. And like, maybe they'll get their picture taken, but everybody can sort of see it happen. And I think that'll give me a little bit more flexibility to make some work that I really love.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I can understand you're feeling your way, aren't you? I mean, it's it's uncharted waters, really. So I can sympathize with that. You mentioned a slideshow earlier. Have you got some images that you can share with everybody?
Yeah, let's see. I think I was just going to go through my here we go. My Instagram story highlights, which mostly I stole from Kyle or people putting this stuff up on Instagram and tagging me. I've been sort of trying to assemble a higher resolution thing, but can you guys see my screen all right here?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm just, on mute going to play these Instagram highlights so we can kind of see some photos and videos of what was going on while I was working here. So, this is kind of like, if you guys just saw this video, this is much like the point at which a tintype becomes a recognizable positive, right? Like people really dug this to the point where, you know, predictably, this is the point where everybody would pull out their camera and make an Instagram video or reel, which was pretty cool, and you could watch. This lady came in and like actually knew me. Most of the people who came knew Brooklyn Film Camera. They were, you know, a much bigger entity. I got some downtime during the great developer and paper shortage of 2021 while waiting for a messenger from B&H to draw with a child. This one was this couple that came in. I think it's Dylan and Amelia, and they actually asked to do a kiss. And I said, okay, sounds good. But they... I asked them if I could touch their heads, which was weird, and then I just like grabbed their heads like bowling balls and shifted them around so I could get a nice angle. I actually like that picture so much. I think one of the things I want to do in an open studio night in LA is just do only like shots of couples kissing in mostly like that pose. I thought it would be like a nice, weird, sweet photo project to do.
What kind of watt seconds power are you using for those? I see all those power packs there next to your camera.
Yeah, I'm using about 20,000 watt seconds worth of speedotrons and a couple of quad heads. I'm traveling with about 40,000 watt seconds, but you know, you can only set up so much at a time in such a space
without blowing the electricity.
That makes wet plate seem like a dream.
Yeah. I mean, it's similar sensitivity, but like. Also, you know, it's at a size where I'm trying to shoot a 20 by 24 at f/16 to get, you know, maybe a quarter of a centimeter worth of depth of field here. So, you know, it's a game to play. I could buy some more speedotrons, but I need a bigger van. Let's see. So yeah, you know, this photos of some happy customers. Actually, this lady who got a portrait with her daughter came to my workshop, and she and this guy Evan, who maybe we'll see in some other photos, had at different times worked for Marielle and Mark. So she actually worked for Marielle and Mark, and Evan worked for her studio after she passed away. But it was kind of an amazing bunch of people to get to talk to. This woman runs the Gowanus Darkroom in Brooklyn. And I always really loved it in these quick portrait sessions when people came, you know, really prepared and were like, this is what I want to do, and had sort of art directed in their head. This is a good one of the camera. I liked it when people art directed in their head what portrait they wanted. Only a few times did people come and have had art directed a photo that was not possible with my puny 20,000 watt seconds of lights. This one was pretty funny. This guy proposed, and that's like the moment that he proposed that we caught on camera. He had emailed us first, and I drew the photo on the back of a coaster and handed it to him and told him I'd put him in some BS poses first, like I was working incompetently, and then eventually just put him on his knee, like. And so I spent about 5 minutes faking like weird, stupid poses, and then eventually I put him on his knee, and I was like, yeah, I like this one. And then I told him that when I'd count to 3, 2, 1, and then I wouldn't actually take the photo, and I'd just wait, and he'd have to trust my judgment for the moment. I was kind of hoping for like a bigger reaction out of the now fiance, but it was pretty good. We caught it. I gave him like a 50% chance that we would whiff on this exposure and get nothing, but he was okay with that. So that was kind of a fun thing to be able to do. Oh, here's a good one coming up. There's something nice about portraits of people with orange shirts and TLRs. I think I shot 2 back-to-back of different people this night.
What's the exposure latitude like? Is it pretty narrow?
Very narrow. It makes Velvia seem very easy to work with. Yeah, like 2 stops. It's another reason why I like working with strobes, is like I can control the contrast. And like a lot of these with the quick portraits, I was working with sort of standard soft butterfly lighting, relying on you know, color rather than tone for separation. And you know, so lighting like this on the picture I shot of Ed Pavez, I would do that because I was with Ed and we had the studio to ourselves for a day. but like this, I don't know if you can see my cursor, this sort of side lighting business is hard, particularly when you're looking at the difference between a modeling light and a strobe tube output and trying to balance them. Like I would never try for that setup in, you know, in a 30-minute session, not unless I did it with like a dummy beforehand and then just had somebody sit down. What else we got here?
So you're shooting at f/16 and you're filtering, right?
Yes.
So what is the effect of, I mean, how many stops are you having to compensate for? Because you're shooting larger than life, so you've got the bellows way out.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I would say the effective ISO is usually around 1 to 3, but depending upon the setup and like, you know, my tubes are old. I had a tube blow. Each tube is slightly different cast. One quad head is slightly different cast than the other, depending upon how they're mixed. You know, I would change my filter pack every set. And so changing your filter pack also changes your exposure. And so like a lot of these is like, sometimes you just got to shoot a Polaroid to know where your exposure is at. And unfortunately, the Polaroid I had to shoot, you know, costs $25 in an hour's worth of work, just to figure out where the next one's going to be at. And so like turning things out quickly also relies on turning the same photo out quickly, right? But as you start to move the lights, you start to need like another 1 or 2 cycles to dial it in. Or I do, you know, I'm just not that perfect at guessing every time. Well, once in a while I guess right and I feel like a genius, but then, you know, I'm smacked down the next time I set something up and need to burn 2 or 3 frames to get there.
So it's not developed by inspection then. It's
no.
Perfectly timed.
Yes,
absolutely.
Okay.
That's one of the.
Well, so it's developed to completion, which makes the developing a little bit more forgiving, so long as you always go long. But it has to be perfectly exposed. Almost everything is controlled by your initial exposure, which gets tricky when the latitude is so small, but it's reasonable to work with.
Would that variance, I'll ask my question, then Mike has another question. Would that variance be a little bit lessened because you're using, like you said, you're using some older strobe packs and then they have different color casts and whatever else? Would that variance go away a little bit if you had essentially, for lack of a better term, like fresher like strobe equipment?
Yeah,
that doesn't have as many miles on it. Speaking of,
yeah, but it's
buys
like
used crap all the time,
right. Yeah, and I do too. So I'm using 2 quad heads, which is 8 tubes at $400 a tube, right? So it's a pricey thing, right? In a month, I expect to blow or break $3,000 worth of equipment. You know, maybe I could be more gentle, but also like I'd much rather just work at the price and speed that makes sense. But yeah, you know, I blew 1 tube in 8 days, and I don't think that's unreasonable. And I've been buying tubes when I can find them, you know, but yeah, if I had to buy them new from B&H, it's what, $3,200 worth of tubes,
right?
And really, like, I would like to shoot full length stuff or environmental stuff that I might need 10 heads instead of 2,
right.
And so yes, you could certainly control this better by having everything dialed in perfectly, and you know, matching, but yeah. I don't know what to tell you.
No, just curious. And then Mike is back with another good question. How is the chemistry consumption? Did you reuse Color Developer?
Yeah, so really good question, Mike. During the great developer shortage, I had to reuse Color Developer a little bit more than I would have liked. And I've done it both ways, right? So Color Developer is by far the most expensive material, right? More than the paper, more than all of the other chemistry together, because it has the shortest life and it just is an expensive set of chemistry. And so you can reuse it, and you will, particularly working at this scale. Like if I'm working in 4x5, I'll just use a tank of color developer that's like a liter, and I could do like a million 4x5s before anything changes. It's just not that much being processed. But a 20x24, particularly in an open tank where, you know, it's a very thin layer of chemistry that's exposed to air, you know, it starts breaking down pretty quickly. So I kind of, you can control exposure and sort of like tone and color really by varying the age or oxidation or used upnicity of your color developer. And there was this thing that Kyle and I at some point were calling peak brown, where you know, my thought is that the color developer either has less blue dye in it or gives up the blue dye, or that you know, coupling chemical wears out sooner. But as we would reuse color developer, we would lose a lot of the blues, and things would become more you know, sort of brown or almost golden. And there's some peak point at which, you know, it looks like an old faded photo, because in an old faded photo the blues bleach out, and in these sort of exhausted color developer ones, the blues weren't deposited in the first place. And so it becomes pleasing for a little bit, and then it becomes gross. And so like there was some point at which I would say, like, it might be nice to keep a couple different buckets of developer used a different amount each time, to sort of like this image that we're looking at here is probably a later in the day with reuse of the chemistry, right? This sort of brown tone, which I really like. This is one of my favorite photos of me that very talented photographer who took my workshop, Sherry Manson, took. But you know, this, we're now working in those sort of golden and brown yellow tones with older developer. But you don't want it in everything. You can just burn cash and one shot the color developer, which, you know, at $900 a portrait, I just burned the color developer, right? Of that cost, 40-50 bucks went into color developer. You know, and that's cool. Oh, here we go. This is another one that's, I would consider about peak brown for that old Polaroid look. Like, you don't want everyone to look like this, but, and you could do this slightly through filtration, but this is really achieved through, you know, very slightly exhausted developer or color developer. But yeah, I mean, you can do it one shot. You can do it reuse. You could even probably replenish it. This is like a batch on fresh developer, right? You can see this blue shirt really pop. Even the subtle blues on the other shirt are pretty nice.
For drying, it looks like you're just hang drying. Would it also be possible to use like a darkroom RC paper dryer?
In fact, it is darkroom RC paper. So any way that you could wash or dry an RC color print, you could also do to this, because that's what it is. Right. And yeah, I mean, it would be great if I had an RC print dryer and washer of this size that I could travel with, but the van is already full. So, you know, this photo was like a first photo of the day, and we can see this is on a reuse day. And we can see like the colors are very, you know, closer to correct and poppy. And this one is like, you know, maybe 5 or 10 prints later, however many prints later, where it starts going a little bit more yellow.
So are you keeping track of the chemistry you use? Like, okay, like you have a sheet or something, a whiteboard, or like fresh chem, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, cross it, do pre-mix, or are you just like ad hocking it?
Yeah, in my head. It's not that, you know. Yeah.
I'd be like, okay, 10, 9, 15.
Right, but like also you have to keep in mind I've been doing it for a long time, but also like I'm doing it all day, and that's the only thing I'm doing all day. And eventually I'd hand it over to somebody. But yeah, I think it is both reasonable when your time is very expensive to just one shot the color developer if that's the look you want, or you know, play with it and get that sort of color. Again, this shot with the guy and his dog is a pretty new developer. This one's getting a little older, but is still pretty new. This is also a pretty new set of developer. Yeah, anyway. What else?
Well, does anybody else have any? Now I'm curious because we've been chatting for a bit. We have a pretty good crowd. Does anybody have any questions right now? Let's open it up for the group. Just out of curiosity.
Well, I'm always loaded with questions, but I don't want to hog the. I don't want to hog the thing. What? I'm sorry, I came in late, so I didn't hear. What lens are you using with that camera? The process lens?
Yeah, I am using a process lens. I am primarily using a 800 millimeter Lomo. This is not lomography. This is like the Leningrad Optical Manufacturing Organization or whatever. And it's, yeah, just a giant copy lens. I also have a 600 APO Nikkor that I use as a backup. That's okay. It's pretty good as a macro lens. Or, you know, semi-macro, I get like 1 to 1.3 or something like that. But yeah, you know, I'm always on the lookout for more bigger lenses.
Diameter of those?
Big, like not quite like a pie plate. The Nikkor is smaller, but think, you know, a big roll of packing tape type of thing, weighs 7 or 8 pounds.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got the 610. That's not that huge a lens, but it has big coverage.
Yeah, I like those lenses. You know, I was standing on a roof looking at the skyline of Manhattan and thinking I would love to take a photo of this, but like I was thinking about how big a lens I would need to sort of get the compression I wanted, and it was like 2600 millimeters. And I think there's just certain things that this camera might not be good at, you know, until I find a giant lens.
I've got a spare 18-inch Series 3 Bessler f3 point something that you might be interested in.
Wild. Does that cover so big? 18?
It covers at least 20 by 20. I'm not sure about 20 by 24, but Kurt Moser shot with it quite a bit.
Wow.
His 20 by 20 tintypes. So I'm sure it's pretty big.
Yeah.
It's an old. it's an opaque projector lens. You know, if you remember those old projectors that, you know, not like an overhead projector, but one that actually had so much power that it lit up an object and then projected it onto a wall.
Oh yeah.
I know they had to have super fast lenses for that.
Huh.
And I've got a spare stuck in it's still in the projector at my mom's house. I have to go get it. I have one that I've got on my 11 by 14, but it has a weird spot in the middle of it, so I'm going to swap it out at some point. The other one looks like it's in better shape. But I just wanted to thank you for what you've done for film photography in general. I mean, you have done some things lately that have reinvigorated everyone interested in film at all, just to see someone tinkering and trying things and building cameras. I mean, you really kind of paved the way for so many other people to get interested in film again. So just wanted to personally thank you for that, because I have to run and actually go eat lunch. But I just want to say that before I left. But,
thank you so much, Joby. You flatter me.
Well, no, he's right. I would like to second what Joe just said. I think the progress you're making for yourself is going to be visible to everyone worldwide. It's you've initiated a global phenomenon, I think.
Well, you know, I don't want to say like this is not my process, right? Like this is something that Joe and I read about on Photrio. What I think our contribution has just been like making a YouTube video, so people like Dave Khrushchev over there would just be exposed to it and get curious, and it's really like, you know, it's that. Yes, in some way, like I like to think that I inspire the internet, but like the internet comes back with everything you ever want to know about anything, you know.
Ethan, before we perhaps move on, talk a little bit about what else you've got in the pipeline. There's a couple of questions from Nicholas, one from Nicholas Kuntz and one from Ian.
Yes. I can read them, or
well, you are the man for reading emails. So
that is. I'm falling back. I'm still interning.
Let's ask Eric. Over to you, Eric.
Well, I'm going to ask Ethan on behalf of other things. From Nicholas, have you thought about using a color paper processing machine and trying to modify it to be able to remove after developing to flash and then reinserting to finish the process? It would require permanent space, so maybe not an option, I would guess. I'd imagine it could make results more consistent.
Absolutely could be done. Yeah, so yes. In fact, when I came back from New York, I stopped at my stepmom's house on my way out, and I picked up two 11-inch wide Fujimoto print processors. Not for this, actually. They were just sitting there since I was a kid. My dad and I made color prints. Yeah, at this size, I'd want something like a Calenta, which is, 1,500-pound machine. Is 36 inches wide. Yes, absolutely. I think I would, or even get like two machines back to back, or one machine with a light, like re-exposure light strip inside of it. There's a lot of ways to skin that cat, or I've actually thought about building some custom processors, yada yada. We could talk about that all day, what I woulda, shoulda, could do, if I had $1 million and all of the time. And so, yes, absolutely, using a color print processor will be a massive benefit for standardization and getting repeatable stuff. In fact, I'm sure there will be a guy with a studio who starts shooting like this and does it. I live in Albuquerque. Nobody would pay me $7 to take a picture. And so I have to travel, and I cannot travel with a Calenta. But I think, maybe somebody's going to figure that out for sure. And certainly, like, if and when I ever set up these Fujimotos, if I were shooting, 8x10s or 4x5s, I'd just throw them in the Fujimoto.
Cool. And then Ian has a question, and then Mike is back with his hand raised very politely. Mike, as always. Ian, were you taking any particular precautions to control the contrast, as is usually necessary with black and white, or is that not really necessary with color paper process?
I don't want to say it's not necessary, but it's not really possible, right? You control the contrast with, or at least of the paper, with the type of paper and maybe the type of light. That being said, there's one type of light that I could get powerful enough, and that's the color I'm stuck with. In terms of not being able to control the contrast, that's kind of why I like, this one I didn't even shoot, but I really dig it. The contrast here is controlled entirely through lighting, right? And the ratio of key to fill can be varied infinitely by moving your lights around or changing your power. And so, like, you can get whatever output contrast curve you want if you can control the light completely with a fixed, contrast curve of the paper. And so, studio lighting is how I control the contrast.
Cool. Mike, hand is raised, sir. What's your question?
Okay. Hey, I just wanted to add I had one question. So after the stop bath, I think it might be, if you were doing it, or maybe in the future, adding a rinse bath before putting in a color developer. That may deplete the color developer faster if there's like carryover stop bath.
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Yeah. And then another thing is, I actually have two small 8x10 roller transport machines set up, and I gave it a shot the other day, putting black and white paper developer, stop bath, and then quick water rinse, and then run it in ambient temperature RA4. I have a process camera with a vacuum back, so
cool. Yeah,
just kind of had that in a small room and set up. And
what roller device have you got, Mike?
I have a RCP 20, a Durst.
I have one of those. Yeah, mine's not modified for RA4, so I'm hoping to run it at ambient temperature at some point.
So I put the black and white developer in that machine, since it does go a little bit slower. Yeah. And then I have an ACP 200. I think that's thermofot. And that one, the heating coils are bad, so I need to replace those. But I did just run RA4 at the normal time, but not the temperature.
I'm doing RA4 in a Jobo drum pretty well at the moment, but I've got this. I picked up this RCP 20. To be honest, it escaped me that it ran slower than RA4 is needed. But then I did some research, and folks are using them at room temperature. So I'm going to play with it. If not, I might just use it for black and white. I don't know yet.
Okay. Yeah. I haven't modified yet mine either, but
no,
definitely.
It seems there's a guy put some instructions out on the internet, but it's I think he might be German, and the translation into English, I read it and I can't make, to be honest, it doesn't read. I can't make head nor tails of it. So I'm hoping that someone out there who's done it might be able to help me at some point.
Okay, and we have actually a flood of questions in, but first, Dan Tree raised his hand. Dan, what you got for us?
Dan, you're muted. You got to unmute your audio too.
Yeah,
there you go.
See Zoom calls all over again. Thank you. It just reminds me of another photographer I was going to mention, Richard Learoyd. I don't know if you've heard that name at all. Here's the spelling.
Yeah, that's the 4th or 5th time I've heard about Richard Learoyd this month. I think he was primarily shooting on Ilfochrome or Cibachrome paper.
Yeah, I wasn't sure exactly the process, and I like how I guess messy yours are. Like, yeah, it's I like having that little bit lack of control. I think just makes it. It's just amazing. But yeah, I saw his work a couple of years ago, and it's pretty amazing. Like a different vein, basically, but a cool one to look at.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of those images. I just became aware of Richard Learoyd on this trip, actually, but I looked him up and realized like he was just shooting Cibachrome or Ilfochrome paper, which they stopped making like 10 years ago. It's something that I printed with a lot. In fact, one of the Fujimotos that's outside right now was set up to do that process, but I don't know if we're ever going to get it back.
Cibachrome was sexy. That was like the ultimate.
He does like full body size, so like his full portraits are life size, as well. So pretty cool.
All right.
Anyways, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Dan. All right, Colin Gore has less of a question, more just a comment. I'd just say, though Ethan didn't pioneer the process, that there's been others in recent years showing some inspiring color reversal work. People are often secretive about their process to keep a bit of their edge when showing work. I think Ethan's unpretentious open source attitude is part of what enabled the very catchy interest. I appreciate that attitude, and it helps everyone, like you mentioned, because it inspires others to take the process further.
Thank you. And thanks for, doing what you can with it, right? Like Mike is over here with 2 processors and a vacuum back, trying things out. He's going to figure some stuff out. Let us know for sure.
And then Graham, I'll get to you, but right before you, PhotoWorks, smiley face, awesome, has a question. I'm sure you've seen Brendan Barry trying out the RA4 reversal process, and he's gotten some big images out of that process, exposing flowers outdoors in his shed camera, to name one project of his. Have you tried bigger paper at all, or did you cap it out at 20 by 24?
Yeah, so far this is as big as I've gotten, but within a week of shooting 20 by 24, like I started thinking like maybe, so it's not something I talk about a lot, but when I was 16 or 17, Joe McNally took my portrait on this Polaroid camera that was like 7 feet tall. And it was built into a room, right? Like to focus it, they just moved an easel around a room, and there were 2 people inside the room and 1 guy outside the room with wireless remotes and things. It was a real thing. He took a lot of these photos around like 9/11. You can look them up. I think it's just search Joe McNally giant Polaroids, you'll find them. But that was like another sort of classic camera. I think it was like 40 by 80 or something like that. That would be really fun. But that's at that point, the camera is a 2-room studio that was probably 3,000 square feet and had maybe 30 or 40 Speedotron packs around. I don't really remember, nor could I have identified them then. And then, a crew of people inside the camera sort of focusing, doing any shifting, and then processing. Yes, I would love to do something like that. But, one, it might require a custom lens to get anything good. 2, it would certainly require you know, an unbelievable expense in Speedotron packs to shoot that thing like I would want to shoot it. You know, maybe someday there'll be a commercial opportunity where somebody wants to buy me 30 Speedo quad heads and let me cut a hole in a wall between two rooms and pour chemistry on the ground. I would absolutely love to do that. It's not, you know, it's not something that I think I'm going to do here in Albuquerque, but, you know, Brendan has been hired in the past to turn a skyscraper into a camera. Maybe somebody will hire me to turn a you know, big box into a thing, or somebody else, right? Like, it's the technology is no mystery. It's just tough, right?
You could turn a Sprinter van into a camera. Like, why am I spacing on his name? The guy down in LA.
Ian Reuter.
Yeah,
but
Ian
I think
Reuter.
he had more of a bread van, or
Yeah.
Heather O'Klaus, or you know, there's bigger is not always like a mental challenge. Is like bigger at a reasonably, you know, affordable and like usable way is tough. You know, I'd love to play around with that. Sure, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Maybe Tony is going to make one.
And then Graham, good sir, your hand is up.
I think what you should do is make Little Miss Speedotron.
Yeah.
So you and Heather get together with that. You talked about when you were first developing the camera, I made the comment of, you know, you don't have to go to true macro 1:1, but with this, you actually went, you know, with that lens you're using, you're doing, you know, what, 1:2 or 2:1. Can you tell us about what that impact is? And because, you know, I'm looking at this at most on my computer screen. I'm not seeing a 20 by 24. What is that like, and what's the real impact of going over size on a human?
Yeah, it's cool. I don't always like to shoot bigger than 1:1, right? Shooting perfect 1:1 is actually kind of a pleasant thing in a 20 by 24. It actually gives you plenty of negative space. Making somebody's head as big as I can, you know, racking my bellows out 7 feet with the 600 and making their head like 1.5 times the size of reality, or twice the size of reality area wise. You know, it's cool and weird and impressive. I really love taking this shot where I shoot somebody's head bigger than life size, and then they hold the thing in front of their head, and it's like a big bobblehead. You know, like, this is my art. It's just shooting digital photos of people with analog photos of bobblehead-sized heads. You know, I think it's a fun thing to do. I don't always want to make people's, like, I think the best portraits are not that close, but maybe they will be if I make Tony's giant room camera.
You know, if you shoot that big, boy, they better have like a nice pores and facial structures, because I could just imagine like that big, it'd be like you could see everything.
Oh, I mean, you can see everything in a tiny plane, right? And so I just go for the eyelashes or the eyes, and then just kind of let everything sort of fall off a little bit. But everybody beautiful if you light them right.
Fair. All right. What else does the crowd have? Anybody? Bueller. Another photographer worth mentioning in terms of room cameras and use of color is John Chiara, JohnChiara. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, I've never heard of this John Chiara. Mike, do you want to tell us a little bit about him?
Yeah, I believe there's a video on him. I don't remember how I stumbled upon it, but I know he made a trailer camera. So basically, he would crawl inside a light-tight trailer and take some photos of San Francisco, you know, on Fuji Crystal Archive or, you know, RA4 color paper. And he may have done some reversal, but it's pretty, you know, pretty interesting work. And a lot of it was just color paper negatives. And that's how I got started, was shooting color paper negatives, you know, with filtration and stuff like that. And my local college had a Colex RA4 processor, so I would just run paper negs through all day long and just burn up a ton of paper. It was really fun. So,
wait, Mike, I want to know, were you contact printing them or scanning and reversing them, or what were reshooting them?
Yeah, so contact printing is an issue, obviously, because of watermark. Yep. And there's very few papers out there. Maybe the Mitsubishi paper. I know Freestyle had some a couple years back. I think that may have been blank. But there's also something about that paper that may not be compatible with mixing different type of papers. There's a big warning label on it. I don't want to get into that, but yeah, just scanning it. And then, you know, RA4 reversal is just easier.
Right.
But yeah, just scan. And, you know, like Eric mentioned earlier, when you scan the paper negative, you can color balance a little more and get some really nice results. Yep.
I actually met John, that you mentioned it, like 5 or 6 years ago at one of his gallery shows, the opening night. There used to be this cluster of photo galleries in one floor of a building in downtown San Francisco, and they'd coordinate their opening nights. And so you could go up this one floor and go to like 4 different galleries that had 4 different openings, and sort of like cheese and wine and beer your way through these shows. And they were huge. Like he would just take the entire original, which was like the size of a wall of his trailer, and just go and just put it up on the wall of the gallery. Like, there it is. And he didn't always, to Nicholas's point, Nicholas said he used to put his negatives through the RA4 processor. RA4 was a photo center in San Francisco that had they had a color darkroom and a massive color print processor. He would also, I saw a video at that opening, he had these huge tubes, and he would take the paper in a light safe environment, and he would just put it in these massive tubes that were the size of his body, and cap them and put the chemistry in them, and he would roll it across his studio by foot, stop it on the other side, turn around and just roll it back by foot. He would just walk behind it, kicking it like a giant jobo that was like 8 feet long and like, you know, 3 feet in diameter, just like.
It's like the Bronze Age jobo.
Yeah, exactly. And then, you know, I can't remember how the hell he emptied it, but he would like get on this like foot ladder and like pour chemistry into the top.
Yeah, there's footage of this somewhere. It's probably on YouTube somewhere. And I've actually went to RA4 once in 2016. Didn't use the facilities at all, but recently that 50-inch Creonite was up on Craigslist.
Yeah, it's gone now. Nobody wanted it. Yeah. It's
oh,
gone,
really?
maybe.
I was trying to make a trip there, and I mean, you know, you got to have the finances to do that. I'm on the East Coast in Florida, so.
Yeah, and also you need to know somebody who can repair the damn thing and has a spare parts. I think.
Yes.
Yeah, as Nicholas pointed, it went to the dump. The only other one of that size that I 100% know about is at the photo department, the school at RIT, Rochester Institute of Technology. My old professor is still there teaching a color printing class, and he and like one maintenance guy keep this massive thing still going for 4 classes a year.
Wow. Well, I actually helped a friend of mine source a 30-inch Creonite.
Oh, nice.
And he just by word of mouth found a guy down in Miami who used to be a Creonite tech. And I'm going down there this next week, and we're going to get it up and running and hopefully do some fun stuff with it.
Start trolling through eBay and every junk thing you can for all the little parts.
Yep.
You know, because they're gone otherwise. Find a
buy a mill.
Yeah, buy a mill and a 3D printer and start doing stuff.
I mean, they're pretty simple machines, and with the amount of technology available today, I think you know, they can be kept alive or re-engineered. So.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Right, I'm going to interject because we've been going a good while now, but I'm still very happy in this conversation. Quite happy for this to continue. But there's one I think I want to just move on to, probably what should be the last section of this gathering, and we were hoping that Steve Lloyd of Chroma Camera might have been able to join us for this, but we know that I know that he's been out today, and I don't think he's going to get back in time. But something that you've actually given us glimpses of it already, Ethan, and I think it'll be just worth touching on your Instax back that you're working on. The reason why I mentioned Steve Lloyd is because Steve Lloyd's also working on something similar, and it would have been great to have the two of you together so you could have a fight. But
I messaged Steve about this. I think Steve agrees with me, is that like the Lomograph lock back opens up a lot of possibilities, and so like if Steve and I can convince 17 people to use the Lomograph lock back, like, and we each take half of them, it's better than nobody using the Lomograph lock back. Like I think it's a pretty cool thing. So I've been working on like putting together a Kickstarter to go to LA and take portraits, and also have been fiddling around with this thing, which was very popular in New York. And so for those of you who haven't seen it, it's a 4x5 graph lock mount Instax wide holder. And like it is an odd duck of a product, but a wonderful product. Traditionally, like nobody has really offered Instax backs for anything. There have been a couple like Coyote Camera Works, and what's that other one that did mini or square for the RB67, some RZs from Zinstax. But this just opens up one Instax wide, which is that big, and mounting to 4x5s is like you can mount it to any sort of camera. So traditionally the way this works is much like my self-developing backs, the registration is pushed back from the normal film flange or film plane of a 4x5 holder. So they give you this kind of silly but clever shim. So when you go to focus, you just put this shim into your ground glass, right, and it changes the registration. And so I saw a lot of people using these in New York, and I was like, that's dumb, let's use something better. So I was very excited about it, but like, why the shim and the focusing screen when you could just have a focusing screen that's the right depth? So this was like the first product that I made that I'll release in a little bit. And actually I told Steve about it, and he's like, oh yeah, I have one of those products. And then somebody released one open source who's also been doing with the RA4 reversal process, but whatever, right? It's a simple idea and it's a good one. And so a lot of people have these products, but now I'll have this product too, which is just like a little bit of a simplifier for using this back on a 4x5 camera. And it has hold on one sec here, it has holes through the end for elastic straps to mount to anything, and it also has the right flange for 4x5 cameras. So like it just mounts on through the graph lock back. But I did not stop here, right? Because while I like large format photography, some of you may know I like handheld large format photography a lot. And this is, I don't even know if you would call Instax wide is like, sheet film, and we can argue what is large format or not. Is it anything, with a bellows, or is it anything over 6x9, or is it just anything that's sheet film? One way or another, I don't think Instax wide is a good proof for 4x5 because it's so small, right? It's only 6x9, which is a nice image size, but I think it's much more relatable to 6x9 or Graflex 2.3. Now, they couldn't make a Graflex 2.3 Lomograph lock back for a number of dimensional reasons, because they're dealing with cameras that have already been made 60 years ago and film that's being made now, neither of which Lomography has a control over. And so I think their intermediate compromise was really amazing. But still a compromise. And so what I thought is, like, I want a handheld camera that'll shoot Instax with a Mamiya press lens, which we'll cover, or a Polaroid 600 SE. So I kind of took like the back of an OG and the front of a homunculus, and I offset the image. So like, okay, you can shoot Instax wide on a handheld 4x5 like my OGs or Steve's snapshot, but like all of the images are still dealing with like this shift and rise or shift and fall, which is just a little too janky for me. And so I made this really, again, you know, like this is an odd duck product because it mates two things that they had no control of. And then I made like a really odd duck lopsided flat camera that mates to this other product that I like that I have no control over. Anyway, so this thing just goes on here, and you can put the focusing screen in too, and it just shoots Instax handheld, and it's been super nice. I mean, the Instax is like ISO 800, or I shoot it at 500 sometimes. So, you know, outdoors I get a lot of depth of field. Scale focus is pretty good. And show you a couple of images from my Infinite Joe's photo series, either of me or Joe here, that we shot on this the other day. Are these focusing for you guys?
Yeah, they're fine.
You know, and they're just sort of like fun little images. I don't know, you know, whether we consider this large format or not, but anyway, that's what I've been making with that. And then I kind of said, well, you know, it's not a good proof for 4x5, but it is a good proof for 6x9 or 6x7. And so, you know, I had all of this extra flange distance here. So what I did was I made this back, which I will make some centered versions because it's just a standard of, you know, conversions of graph lock to 4.5 to 2.3. But this is an offset graph lock 4.5 to 2.3 adapter. So you have a focusing screen here that's a 2x3 graph lock, and then a plate that adapts to 4x5. And it's, again, this is at the same registration distance as this Lomo graph lock back. And so when you take this thing off, then it'll mount a graph lock 2.3 or an RB67 or Horseman back. And so now I kind of have this camera that will shoot Instax wide and 6x7, 6.8, 6.9, 6.45, whatever, all at the same distance and all with the lens perfectly centered in the thing. So that's what I've been like most excited about this week, which is like kind of large format, kind of medium format system cameras that I've been working on. I bought a lot of Instax film and eventually just bit the bullet and bought some nice Mamiya press lenses after I spent a day shooting with this, and I was like just super fascinated with it. And
you chose the Mamiya press lenses. Why?
Oh, one, because, you know, I have the Homunculus and the Bronco Pan that have Mamiya press mounts, right? Okay. And it's a mount that I like working with. It has a helical shutter, aperture, everything you need really for the mechanics. But also they're relatively inexpensive, really, really nice, and they cover that format really well. Like every single Mamiya press lens covers, they don't cover 4x5, but they all cover Instax wide. Only 3 of them had the coverage to be marketed with the Polaroid 600 SE, which has a different mount, and there'll be a version for the SE mount. And so they have the, I believe, 75, 127, and maybe the 150 for Polaroid, but the Polaroids were bigger than the Instax, so all the Mamiya press lenses cover.
Particularly I'm amused by the fact that this is what I've been fascinated by this week.
Yeah.
It's back to my earlier point of squirrel.
Yes. Yes.
So I think we've been on for a while. And my wonderful co-hosts in England are starting to either have a bit too much wine or becoming to be starved. Does anybody else have any further questions or follow-ups for Ethan before we wrap down this fantastic event? And I love just saying Bueller because I am of that generation. Bueller. If you don't catch the cultural reference, please go watch Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Just saying.
Well, I think we're there, and I've got to say the way when Joseph Brunges left us to go get his tea or his breakfast or lunch, whatever it was in his time of America, he said some really nice words, and I couldn't even hope to emulate what he said there. So. Hopefully everybody that's here now has heard those. So Ethan, it's been absolutely wonderful having you with us and being so generous with your time.
Hell yeah.
Oh, thanks, guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks, Ethan.
Yeah, and for those of you who haven't interacted with Ethan, like in other venues or through his podcast, or whatever, he is always willing to like take some time to do some back and forth to help you sort stuff out. And yeah, it's just one of the most generous folks in, I think, the camera community, the analog photography community that I've been fortunate enough to run across. So
okay. Now you're making me uncomfortable. Thank you very much. We know these people.
Carl and Gore, long but still shorter than a few LFPP episodes.
No, I don't think we've had one quite. We don't think we've had a normal podcast.
We've never had a normal podcast.
I was going to say one of the highlights for me of this event is actually when Gray and Young's been asking you questions.
I know.
So I'm thinking, well, you know, they do the homemade camera podcast together, and it's almost as if like Graham, the kind of questions he was asking there, I was thinking, you know, they were very fresh, you know, and it was interesting because you guys must talk to each other all the time, and yet there's still fresh things to come out, and I found that quite fascinating.
To be fair, I disappeared for a month and ghosted everybody.
Well, if people want to see your work and things that you sell and stuff like that, what are all the places that people can do that?
Okay, you can find me on Instagram at Cameradactyl, or buy some Cameradactyl stuff at www.cameradactyl.com. And if you are by the off chance watching this in LA and are interested in the 20x24 camera, look out for my Kickstarter next week-ish.
Excellent. And as far as this year's concerned in the LFPP, I mean, technically this isn't a podcast. I think we might squeeze one more in before Christmas, because who knows? We'll see.
A holiday special.
Yeah, maybe. I've got folks lined up.
Yeah, as have I as well. So
those guys who are traveling around America with their large format cameras, taking pictures of people.
I also have one lined up as well, the 10 types of burn victims.
Yeah.
So we have
got three podcasts to fit in before Christmas.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. But we'll do our best. And what's interesting, we've been doing this now for 3 years, something like that, and we're still getting suggestions about who to talk to, and there's loads of people we still want to talk to. So it's absolutely wonderful, that is. So I think let's say goodbye for ourselves, as in from a host perspective. So Eric, how can people keep up with the things that you do and go and look at what you do?
Mostly I'm just on Instagram. Like I said earlier, I'm in awe of people who can keep up a YouTube and or website, so it's just ERIKHMATHY is my Instagram account.
And the same question to you, Andrew.
I'm mostly Warboys Snapper, WARBOYS Snapper. On most places, or just me.
Has the Fenland Darkroom got any special Instagram accounts, things like that?
Fenland Camera and Darkroom. Well, I just advertise it really through Twitter, and it's got its own little Facebook page with a couple of hundred people keep an eye on me.
And just for the benefit of those people listening, what is the Fenland Camera and Darkroom?
Well, it was a sort of post-semi-retirement project, so I made the darkroom bigger, and I just offer mainly so far introductory workshops to darkroom and mostly large format photography, where I've actually been successfully, Simon, teaching the Scheimpflug principle.
Excellent.
In a way that I never thought I'd be able to, but I have, and explained it very clearly. Which I haven't been able to do so on podcasts, but I have in real life. So I've done 12, 13 days of workshops since the summer, and it's been brilliant,
and more than reasonably priced as well, I might add.
Yeah, going up a little bit next year, but still the hashtag affordable workshops. So it has its place, and you can then go off and learn some fabulous things with Dave Shrimpton with wet plates, or Andrew Sanderson, Ilford master printer. But I found my little niche of It's what it's enabled me to do is pay for film and paper, and also investing in the RA4 stuff, bits and bobs and toys, and some of the Jobo bits and bobs, because semi-retirement brings hardship and penury. So it's either sell my experience and services, at a reasonable price, or take food off my wife's table. But thank you for that little opportunity to advertise Fenland Camera and Darkroom.
And also, you heard it here. Andrew is better in real life than he is online, which is
absolutely.
I can't even imagine.
And I was just going to do my my connects and things like that, whatever they're called. But we've just as we're finishing this this episode of a gathering, Nicole Small has joined us.
Hi, Nicole.
Who is one of our prior guests on the podcast, and one of our favorite experimental photographers, who's just constantly reinventing her personal wheel, and I am in awe of. So,
thanks.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi.
And so on that note, as I said, now I'm going to say goodbye to all of us. So I'm glad we got a bit of you there, Nicole. I'm on Twitter as Simon4. I'm on Instagram as Simon Forster Photographic. We have a Instagram feed for the Large Format Photography Podcast, which is pretty much broadcasting rather than anything else, really. But if you do go onto that, just check out the followers. There's some incredible followers on there, so that's worth just going there just for that reason.
That's amazing, really, considering all there is like LFPP logos, pretty much, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So that's great. If anybody wants to get in touch with us, Eric, what's the best way of doing that?
It is. I freeze every time. It's like Simon always slaughtering our guest names. I always freeze on the email address. It's large format photography podcast @gmail.com.
Excellent. And I just wish to do a final thanks to all of those people that have been that have joined in and come and gone, and those people that are still with us, or just forgotten to switch their computers off. I'm not entirely sure. So thank you very much. Thanks for your contributions were amazing, and absolutely excellent questions. So thank you all, everybody that's taken part. It's been a pleasure and an honor. And again, one final thank you to Ethan. You're ace.
You're a superstar of the age.
I'm muted as well. So there we go. Always Zach.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Okay. And we'll see you on the next podcast.
So,
or 3.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.